Krishna. Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to ISKCON Dublin. Continuing reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. Sorry for little delay. Some problem in the basement. Sorry, we'll start as always with reciting of Mahima Stotra of Sanatana Goswami. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha, Sarva Vedaika Satpala, Sarva Siddhanta Nadya, Sarva Lokaika Drikpradhan. A nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths. You are the only giver of sight to all of the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Pranam, Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu, Kalitvanto Ditaditya, Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life heir of all of the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Patnaya, Prema Vakshaksharayate, Sarvanda Sarvasevyaya, Sri Krishna Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madhika Bandho Matsangin, Madgoro Matmahadana, Manishtaraka Matbhagya, Madananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Sadhu Sadhutadayi, Atini Chochataraka, Hana Munchakadachimam, Prena Hrit Kantayospuram. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So welcome again to ISKCON Dublin, Middle Abbey Street in the heart of Dublin. Please excuse for a late start. Again, I hope you see me right. I don't have my team with me, so hope everything is correct. We're continuing reading of Srimad Bhagavatam from verse 40, chapter 40, Disappearance of Lord Krishna. So this is the new week. We're just recapping the last week's. We're getting the habit of recapping just to refresh our memory what we read last week. So we started at the end of the 13th chapter. Last week we finished the 13th chapter, Dhritarashtra, how Dhritarashtra quit home. And then we start a new chapter, which we are finishing today. We have a few verses to go. Disappearance of Lord Krishna. So we just observed all the verses are full of descriptions of, began with omens. Maharaj Yudhishthira was observing the omens of bad signs of the bad times to come. And then Arjuna appears on Dwarka, and Yudhishthira start inquiring Arjuna about the welfare of the Yadav family. And we are now here just when Yudhishthira is inquiring about his own welfare, about Arjuna's welfare. So, let's begin. Has someone addressed you? So it's still Yudhishthira talking to Arjuna. Has someone addressed you with unfriendly words or threatened you? Could you not give charity to one who asked, or could you not keep your promise to someone? Purport. kshatriya or a rich man is sometimes visited by persons who are in the need of money. When they are asked for a donation, it is the duty of the possessor of wealth to give in charity in consideration of the person, place and time. If a kshatriya or a rich man fails to comply with this obligation, he must be very sorry for this discrepancy. Similarly, one should not fail to keep his promise to give in charity. These discrepancies are sometimes causes of despondency, and thus failing, a person becomes subjected to criticism, which might also be the cause of Arjuna's plight. 41. You are always the protector of the deserving living beings, such as brahmanas, children, cows, women, and the diseased. Could you not give them protection when they approached you for shelter? Purport. Brahmanas who are always engaged in researching knowledge for the society's welfare work, both materially and spiritually, deserve the protection of the king in all respects. Similarly, the children of the state, the cow, the diseased person, the woman, and the old man specifically require the protection of the state or kshatriya king. If such living beings do not get protection by the kshatriya or the royal order or by the state, it is certainly shameful for the kshatriya or the state. If such things had actually happened to Arjuna, Maharaj Yudhishthira was anxious to know about these discrepancies. 42. Have you contacted a woman of impeachable character? Or have you not properly treated a deserving woman? Or have you been defeated on the way by someone who is inferior or equal to you? It appears from this verse that during the time of the Pandavas, free contact between man and woman was allowed in certain conditions only. The higher caste men, namely the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, could accept a woman of the Vaishya or the Shudra community, but a man from the lower caste could not contact a woman of the higher caste. Even a Kshatriya could not contact a woman of the Brahmana caste. The wife of a Brahmana is considered one of the 7 mothers, namely one's own mother, the wife of the spiritual master or teacher, the wife of a Brahmana, the wife of a king, the cow, the nurse, and the earth. Such contact between man and woman was known as Uttama and Adama. Contact of a Brahmana with a Kshatriya woman is Uttama. The contact of a Kshatriya with a Brahmana woman is Adama and therefore condemned. A woman approaching a man for contact should never be refused. But at the same time, the discretion, as above mentioned, may also be considered. Bhima was approached by Hidimbi from a community lower than the Shudras, and Yayati refused to marry the daughter of Shukracharya because of Shukracharya's being a Brahmana. Vyasadeva, a Brahmana, was called to beget Pandu and Dhritarashtra. Satyavati belonged to a family of fishermen, but Parashara, a great Brahmana, begot in her Vyasadeva. So there are so many examples of contacts with women, but in all cases the contacts were not abominable, nor were the results of such contacts bad. Contact between man and woman is natural, but that also must be carried out under regulative principles, so that social consecration may not be disturbed, or unwanted worldless population be increased for the unrest of the world. It is abominable for a Kshatriya to be defeated by one who is inferior in strength or equal in strength. If one is defeated at all, he should be defeated by some superior power. Arjuna was defeated by Bhishmadev. The Lord Krishna saved him from the danger. This was not an insult to Arjuna, because Bhishmadeva was far superior to Arjuna in all ways, namely age, respect, and strength. But Karna was equal to Arjuna, and therefore Arjuna was in crisis when fighting with Karna. It was felt by Arjuna, and therefore Karna was killed even by crooked means. Such are the engagements of the Kshatriyas, and Maharaj Yudhishthira inquired from his brother whether anything undesirable happened on the way home from Dwarka. 43. Have you not taken care of old men and boys who deserve to dine with you? Have you left them and taken your meals alone? Have you committed some unpardonable mistake which is considered to be abominable? Purport. It is the duty of a householder to feed first of all the children, the old members of the family, the brahmanas and the invalids. Besides that, an ideal householder He is required to call for any unknown hungry man to come and dine before he himself goes to take his meals. He is required to call for such a hungry man thrice on the road. The neglect of this prescribed duty of a householder, especially in the matter of the old men and children, is unpardonable. Unpardonable. 44. Or is it that you are feeling empty for all time because you might have lost your most intimate friend, Lord Krishna? Oh my brother Arjuna, I can think of no other reason for your becoming so dejected. Coming to the last verse. Purport. All the inquisitiveness of Maharaj Yudhishthira about the world situation was already conjectured by Maharaj Yudhishthira on the basis of Lord Krishna's disappearance from the vision of the world, and this was now disclosed by him because of the acute dejection of Arjuna, which could not have been possible otherwise. So even though he was doubtful So even though he was doubtful about it, he was obliged to inquire frankly from Arjuna on the basis of Sri Narada's indication. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 14th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam entitled The Disappearance of Lord Krishna. So we've seen just here in the end, Yudhishthira is inquiring about Arjuna's welfare, and he enumerates, as we counted, 10 causes. So Arjuna's brother Yudhishthira enumerates 10 causes. What could have been cause for Arjuna's dejection, for Arjuna's feeling sorrow. And finally, now in the last one, in 44, sorry, he asked directly what he was already suspecting beforehand. So continuing to the next chapter, entitled The Pandavas Retire Timely. Text number 1. Sutta Goswami said, Arjuna, the celebrated friend of Lord Krishna, was grief-stricken because of his strong feeling of separation from Krishna, over and above all Maharaj Yudhishthira's speculated inquiries. Purport. Being too much aggrieved, Arjuna practically became choked up, and therefore it was not possible for him to reply properly to the various speculated inquiries of Maharaj Yudhishthira. 2. Due to grief, Arjuna's mouth and lotus-like heart had dried up. Therefore his body lost all luster. Now, remembering the Supreme Lord, he could hardly utter a word in reply. Text 3. With great difficulty, he checked the tears of grief that smeared his eyes. He was very distressed because Lord Krishna was out of his sight, and he increasingly felt affection for him. 4. Remembering Lord Krishna and his well-wishes, benefactions, intimate familiar relations, and his chariot driving, Arjuna, overwhelmed and breathing very heavily, began to speak. Purport. The Supreme Living Being is perfect in all relations with his pure devotee. Sri Arjuna is one of the typical pure devotees of the Lord, reciprocating in the fraternal relationship, and the Lord's dealing with Arjuna are displays of friendship of the highest perfect order. He was not only a well-wisher of Arjuna, but actually a benefactor, and to make it still more perfect, the Lord tied him into a family relationship by arranging Subhadra's marriage with him. And above all, the Lord agreed to become a chariot driver of Arjuna in order to protect his friend from warfare risks, and the Lord became actually happy when he established the Pandavas to rule over the world. Arjuna remembered all this one after another, and thus he became overwhelmed with such thoughts. Text 5. Arjuna said, O King, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who who treated me exactly like an intimate friend, has left me alone. Thus my astounding power, which astonished even the demigods, is no longer with me. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita 10:41, the Lord says, anyone specifically powerful and opulent in wealth, strength, beauty, knowledge, and all that is materially desirable is to be considered but a product of an insignificant portion of the complete whole of my energy. No one therefore can be independently powerful in any measure without being endowed by the Lord. When the Lord descends on the earth along with his eternal ever-liberated associates, he not only displays the divine energy possessed by himself, but also empowers his associate devotees with the required energy to execute his mission of incarnation. It is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita 4:5 that the Lord and his eternal associates descend on the earth many times, but the Lord remembers all the different roles of incarnations, whereas the associates, by his supreme will, forget them. Similarly, the Lord takes away with him all his associates when he disappears from the earth. The power and energy which were bestowed upon Arjuna were required for fulfillment of the mission of the Lord, but when his mission was fulfilled, the emergency powers were withdrawn from Arjuna because the astounding powers of Arjuna, which were astonishing even to the denizens of heaven, were no longer required, and they were not meant for going back home, back to God. If endowment of powers and withdrawal of powers by the Lord are possible even for a great devotee like Arjuna, or even the demigods in heaven, then what to speak of the ordinary living beings who are but fixed compared to such great souls? The lesson is, therefore, that no one should be puffed up for his powers borrowed from the Lord. A sane man should rather feel obliged to the Lord for such benefactions and must utilize such power for the service of the Lord. Such power can be withdrawn at any time by the Lord, so the best use of such power and opulence is to engage them in the service of the Lord. Text 6. I have just lost him whose separation for a moment would render all the universes unfavorable and void, like bodies without life. Purport. Factually, for a living being, there is no one dearer than the Lord. The Lord expands himself by innumerable parts and parcels, as Swamsha and Vibhinamsha. Paramatma is the Swamsha part of the Lord, whereas the Vibhinamsha parts are the living beings. As the living being is the important factor in the material body, for without the living being, the material body has no value. Similarly, without Paramatma, the living being has no status quo. Similarly, Brahman or Paramatma has no locus standi without the Supreme Lord Krishna. This is thoroughly explained in the Bhagavad Gita. Trying to figure out what locus standi is. Would suspect it means standing in position. Locus is like a place, and standing like standing. Speculation or something. Similarly, Brahman or Paramatma has no locus standi without the Supreme Lord Krishna. They have no value or without, they have no standing. This is thoroughly explained in the Bhagavad Gita. They are all interlinked with one another, or interdependent factors. Thus, in the ultimate issue, the Lord is the summum bonum, and therefore the vital principle of everything. Text 7. Only by his merciful strength was I able to vanquish all the lusty princes assembled at the palace of King Drupada for the selection of the bridegroom. With my bow and arrow, I could pierce the fish target and thereby gain the hand of Draupadi. Purport. Draupadi was the most beautiful daughter of King Drupada, and when she was a young girl, almost all the princes desired her hand. But Drupada Maharaja decided to hand over his daughter to Arjuna only and therefore contrived a peculiar way. There was a fish hanging on the inner roof of the house under the protection of a wheel. The condition was that, out of the princely order, one must be able to pierce the fish's eyes through the wheel of protection, and no one would be allowed to look up at the target. On the ground there was a water pot in which the target and wheel were reflected, and one had to fix his aim toward the target by looking at the trembling water in the pot. Maharaj Drupada well knew that only Arjuna or alternately Karna could successfully carry out the plan, but still he wanted to hand his daughter to Arjuna. And in the assembly of the princely order, when Drishtadyumna, the brother of Draupadi, introduced all the princes to his grown-up sister, Karna was also present in the game. But Draupadi tactfully avoided Karna as the rival of Arjuna, and she expressed her desires through her brother Drishtadyumna that she was unable to accept anyone who was less than a Kshatriya. The Vaishyas and the Shudras are less important than the Kshatriyas. Karna was known as the son of a carpenter, a Shudra, so Draupadi avoided Karna by this plea. When Arjuna, in the dress of a poor Brahmana, pierced the difficult target, everyone was astonished, and all of them, especially Karna, offered a stiff fight to Arjuna. But as usual, by the grace of Lord Krishna, he was able to emerge very successful in the princely fight, and thus gain the valuable hand of Krishna, or Draupadi. Arjuna was lamentably remembering the incident in the absence of the Lord, by whose strength only he was so powerful. Text 8. Because he was near me, it was possible for me to conquer with great dexterity the powerful king of heaven, Indradeva, along with his demigod associates, and thus enabled the fire god to devastate the Khandava forest. And only by his grace was the demon named Maya saved from the blazing Khandava forest, and thus we could build our assembly house of wonderful architectural workmanship, where all the princes assembled during the performance of Rajasva Yaga and paid their tributes. Demon Maya Danava was an inhabitant of the forest Khandava, and when the Khandava forest was The demon Maya Danava was an inhabitant of the forest Khandava, and when the Khandava forest was set on fire, he asked protection from Arjuna. Arjuna saved his life, and as a result of this, the demon felt obliged. He reciprocated by building a wonderful assembly house for the Pandavas, which attracted the extraordinary attention of all state princes. They felt the supernatural power of the Pandavas, and thus, without grudge, all of them submitted and paid tributes to the emperor. The demons possess wonderful and supernatural powers to create material wonders, but they are always disturbing elements in society. And modern demons are the harmful material scientists who create some material wonders for disturbance in the society. For example, the creation of nuclear weapons has caused some panic in human society. Maya was also a materialist like that, and he knew the art of creating such wonderful things. And yet Lord Krishna wanted to kill him. When he was chased both by the fire and by the will of Lord Krishna, he took shelter of such a devotee as Arjuna, who saved him from the wrath of the fire of Lord Shri Krishna. Devotees are therefore more merciful than the Lord, and in devotional service the mercy of a devotee is more valuable than the mercy of the Lord. Both the fire and the Lord ceased from chasing the demon as soon as both of them saw that the demon was given shelter by such a devotee as Arjuna. This demon, feeling obliged to Arjuna, wanted to do him some service to show his gratefulness, but Arjuna declined to accept anything from him in exchange. Lord Shri Krishna, however, being pleased with Maya for his taking shelter of a devotee, asked him to render service unto King Yudhishthira by building a wonderful assembly house. The process is that by the grace of the devotee, the mercy of the Lord is obtained, and by the mercy of the Lord, a chance to serve the Lord's devotees obtained. The club of Bhimasena was also a gift of Maya Dhamma. Text 9. Your respectable younger brother, who possesses the strength of 10,000 elephants, killed by his grace Jarasandha, whose feet were worshipped by many kings. These kings had been brought for sacrifice in Jarasandha's Mahabhairava Yagya, but they were thus released. Later they paid tribute to your majesty. Purport. Jarasandha was a very powerful king of Magadha, and the history of his birth and activities is also very interesting. His father, King Brihadrata, was also a very prosperous and powerful king of Magadha, but he had no son, although he married two daughters of the king of Kashi. Being disappointed in not getting a son from either of the two queens, the king, along with his wives, left home to live in the forest for austerities. But in the forest he was blessed by one great rishi to have a son, and he gave him one mango to be eaten by the queens. The queens did so and were very soon pregnant. The king was very happy to see the queens bearing children, but when the ripe time approached, the queens delivered one child in two parts, one from each of the queens' wombs. Two parts were thrown in the forest where a great she-demon used to live, and she was glad to have some delicate flesh and blood from the newly born child. Out of curiosity she joined the two parts, and the child became complete and regained life. The she-demon was known as Jara, and being compassionate on the childless king, she went to the king and presented him with a nice child. The king was very pleased with the she-demon and wanted to reward her according to her desire. The she-demon expressed a desire that the child be named after her, and thus the child was surnamed Jarasandha, or one who was joined by Jara, the she-demon. In fact, this Jarasandha was born as one of the parts and parcels of the demon Viprachiti. The saint of whose benedictions the queens bore the child was called Chandra Kaushika, who foretold of the child before his father Brihadrata. Since he possessed demoniac qualities from birth, naturally he became a great devotee of Lord Shiva, who is the Lord of all ghostly and demoniac men. Ravana was a great devotee of Lord Shiva, and so also King Jarasandha. He used to sacrifice all arrested kings before Lord Mahabhairava, Shiva, and by his military power he defeated many small kings and arrested them to butcher before Mahabhairava. There are many devotees of Lord Mahabhairava or Kalabhairava in the province of Bihar, formerly called Magadha. Jarasandha was a relative of Kamsa, the maternal uncle of Krishna, and therefore after Kamsa's death, King Jarasandha became a great enemy of Krishna, and there were many fights between Jarasandha and Krishna. Lord Krishna wanted to kill him, but he also wanted that those who served as military men for Jarasandha might not be killed. Therefore a plan was adopted to kill him. Krishna, Bhima and Arjuna together went to Jarasandha in the dress of poor brahmanas and begged charity from King Jarasandha. Jarasandha never refused charity to any brahmana, and he performed many sacrifices also, yet he was not on par with devotional service. Lord Krishna, Bhima and Arjuna asked Jarasandha for the facility of fighting him, and it was settled that Jarasandha would fight with Bhima only. So all of them were both guests and combatants of Jarasandha, and Bhima and Jarasandha fought every day for several days. Bhima became disappointed, but Krishna gave him hints about Jarasandha's being joined together as an infant, and thus Bhima dissected him again and so killed him. All the kings who were detained in the concentration camp to be killed before Mahabhairava were thus released by Bhima. Feeling thus obliged to the Pandavas, they paid tribute to King Yudhishthira. Text 10. It was he only who loosened the hair of all the wives of the miscreants who dared open the cluster of your queen's hair, which had been nicely dressed and sanctified for the great Rajasya sacrificial ceremony. At that time she fell down at the feet of Lord Krishna with tears in her eyes. Purport. Queen Draupadi had a beautiful bunch of hair, which was sanctified in the ceremonial function of Rajasya Yagya. But when she was lost in a bed, Dushasana touched her glorified hair to insult her. Draupadi then fell down at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and Lord Krishna decided that all the wives of Dushasana and company should have their hair loosened as a result of the battle of Kurukshetra. Thus, after the battle of Kurukshetra, after all the sons and grandsons of Dhritarashtra died in battle, all the wives of the family were obliged to loosen their hair as widows. In other words, all the wives of the Kuru family became widows because of Dushasana's insulting a great devotee of the Lord. The Lord can tolerate insults upon himself by any miscreant, because the Father tolerates even insults from the Son. But he never tolerates insults upon his devotees. By insulting a great soul, one has to forego all the results of pious acts and benedictions also. Text 11. During our exile, Durvasa Muni, who eats with his 10,000 disciples, intrigued with our enemies to put us in dangerous trouble. At that time he, Lord Krishna, simply by accepting the remnants of food saved us. By his accepting food thus, the assembly of munis, while bathing in the river, felt sumptuously fed. And all the three worlds were also satisfied. Purport. Durvasa Muni, a powerful mystic Brahmana determined to observe the principles of religion with great vows and under strict austerities. His name is associated with many historical events, and it appears that the great mystic could be both easily satisfied and easily annoyed, like Lord Shiva. When he was satisfied, he could do tremendous good to the servitor, but if he was dissatisfied, he could bring about the greatest calamity. Kumari Kunti, at her father's house, used to minister all kinds of services to all great brahmanas. And being satisfied with her good reception, Durvasa Muni blessed her with the power to call any demigod she desired. It is understood that he was a plenary incarnation of Lord Shiva, and thus he could be either easily satisfied or annoyed. He was a great devotee of Lord Shiva, and by Lord Shiva's order, he accepted the priesthood of King Shvetaketu because of the king's performance of sacrifice for 100 years. Sometimes he used to visit the parliamentary assembly of the heavenly kingdom of Indra. He could travel in space by his great mystic powers, and it is understood that he traveled a great distance through space, even up to the Vaikuntha planets beyond material space. He traveled all these long distances within 1 year during his quarrel with King Ambarish, the great devotee and emperor of the world. He had about 10,000 disciples, and wherever he visited and became a guest of the great Kshatriya kings, he used to be accompanied by a number of followers. Once he visited the house of Duryodhana, the enemy cousin of Maharaj Yudhishthira. Duryodhana was intelligent enough to satisfy the Brahmana by all means, and the great Rishi wanted to give some benediction to Duryodhana. Duryodhana knew his mystic powers, and he knew also that the mystic Brahmana, if dissatisfied, could cause some havoc, and thus he designed to engage the Brahmana to show his wrath upon his enemy cousins, the Pandavas. When the Rishi wanted to award some benediction to Duryodhana, the latter wished that he should visit the house of Maharaj Yudhishthira, who was the eldest and chief among all his cousins. But by his request, he would go to him after he had finished his meals with his queen Draupadi. Duryodhana knew that after Draupadi's dinner, it would be impossible for Maharaj Yudhishthira to receive such a large number of Brahmana guests, and thus the Rishi would be annoyed and would create some trouble for his cousin Maharaj Yudhishthira. That was the plan of Duryodhana. Durvasa Muni agreed to this proposal, and he approached the king in exile according to the plan of Duryodhana, after the king and Draupadi had finished their meals. On his arrival at the door of Maharaj Yudhishthira, he was at once well received, and the king requested him to finish his noontime religious rites in the river, for by that time the foodstuff would be prepared. Durvasa Muni, along with his large number of disciples, went to take part in the river, and Maharaj Yudhishthira was in great anxiety about the guests. As long as Draupadi had not taken her meals, food could be served to any number of guests, but the rishi, by the plan of Duryodhana, reached there after Draupadi had finished her meals. When the devotees are put into difficulty, they have an opportunity to recollect the word with rapt attention. So Draupadi was thinking of Lord Krishna in that dangerous position, and the all-pervading Lord could at once know the dangerous position of his devotees. He therefore came there on the scene and asked Draupadi to give whatever food she might have in her stock. On her being so requested by the Lord, Draupadi was sorrowful because the Supreme Lord asked her for some food and she was unable to supply it at that time. She said to the Lord that the mysterious dish which she had received from the sun god could supply any amount of food if she herself had not eaten. But on that day she had already taken her meals, and thus they were in danger. By expressing her difficulties, she began to cry before the Lord, as only a woman would do in such a position. The Lord, however, asked Draupadi to bring up the cooking pots to see if there was any particle of foodstuff left. And on Draupadi's doing so, the Lord found some particle of vegetable sticking to the pot. The Lord at once picked it up and ate it. After doing so, the Lord asked Draupadi to call for her guests, the company of Durvasa. Bhima was sent to call them from the river. Bhima said, "Why are you delaying, sirs? Come on, the food is ready for you." But the Brahmanas, because of Lord Krishna accepting a little particle of food, felt sumptuously fat, even while they were in the water. They thought that since Maharaj Yudhishthira must have prepared many valuable dishes for them, and since they were not hungry and could not eat, the king would feel very sorry, so it was better not to go there. Thus they decided to go away. This incident proves that the Lord is the greatest mystic, and therefore he is known as Yogeshwara. Another instruction is that every householder must offer food to the Lord, and the result will be that everyone, even a company of guests numbering 10,000, will be satisfied because of the Lord's being satisfied. That is the way of devotional service. Text 12. It was by his influence only that in a fight I was able to astonish the personality of God, Lord Shiva, and his wife, the daughter of Mount Himalaya. Thus he, Lord Shiva, became pleased with me and awarded me his own weapon. Other demigods also delivered their respective weapons to me, and in addition, I was able to reach the heavenly planets in this present body and was allowed in half-elevated seat. Purport. By the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, all the demigods, including Lord Shiva, were pleased with Arjuna. The idea is that one who is favored by Lord Krishna or any other demigod may not necessarily be favored by the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. Ravana was certainly a great devotee of Lord Shiva, but he could not be saved from the wrath of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Chandra. And there are many instances like that in the histories of the Puranas. But here is an instance where we can see that Lord Shiva became pleased even in the fight with Arjuna. The devotees of the Supreme Lord know how to respect the demigods, but the devotees of the demigods sometimes foolishly think that the Supreme Personality of God is no greater than the demigods. By such a conception, one becomes an offender and ultimately meets with the same end as Ravana and others. The instances described by Arjuna during his friendly dealings with Lord Shri Krishna are instructive for all who may be convinced by the lessons that one can achieve with all favors simply by pleasing the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, whereas the devotees or worshippers of the demigods may achieve only partial benefits, which are also perishable, just as the demigods themselves are. Another significance of the present verse is that Arjuna, by the grace of Lord Shri Krishna, was able to reach the heavenly planet even with the self-same body, and was honored by the heavenly demigod Indradeva, being seated with him half elevated. One can reach the heavenly planets by the pious acts recommended in the Shastras in the category of fruitive activities. And as stated in the Bhagavad Gita 9.21, when the reactions of such pious acts are spent, the enjoy is again degraded to this earthly planet. The moon is also on the level with the heavenly planets. And only persons who have performed virtues only, performing sacrifices, giving charity, and undergoing severe austerities, can be allowed to enter into the heavenly planets after the duration of life of the body. Arjuna was allowed to enter into the heavenly planets in the self-same body, simply by the grace of the Lord. Otherwise, it is not possible to do so. The present attempts to enter into the heavenly planets by the modern scientists will certainly prove futile, because such scientists are not on the level of Arjuna. They are ordinary human beings without any assets of sacrifice, charity, or austerities. The material body is influenced by the three modes of material nature, namely goodness, passion, and ignorance. The present population is more or less influenced by the modes of passion and ignorance, and the symptoms for such influence are exhibited in their becoming very lusty and greedy. Such degraded fellows can hardly approach the higher planetary systems. Above the heavenly planets, there are many other planets also, which only those who are influenced by goodness can reach. In heavenly and other planets within the universe, inhabitants are all highly intelligent, many more times than the human beings, and they are all pious in the higher and the highest mode of goodness. They are all devotees of the Lord, and although their goodness is not unadulterated, still they are known as demigods, possessing the maximum amount of good qualities possible within the material world. Text 13. When I stayed for some days as a guest in the heavenly planets, all the heavenly demigods, including King Indradeva, took shelter of my arms, which were marked with the Gaudiya bow, to kill the demon named Nivatakavacha. O King, descendant of Ajamida, at the present moment I am bereft of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whose influence I was so powerful. Purport. The heavenly demigods are certainly more intelligent, powerful, and beautiful, and yet they had to take help from Arjuna because of his Gandiva bow, which was empowered by the grace of Lord Shri Krishna. The Lord is all-powerful, and by his grace his pure devotee can be as powerful as he may desire, and there is no limit to it. And when the Lord withdraws his power from anyone, he is powerless by the will of the Lord. 14. The military strength of the Kauravas was like an ocean in which there dwelt many invincible existences, and thus it was insurmountable. But because of his friendship, I, seated on the chariot, was able to cross over it. And only by his grace was I able to regain the cows and also collect by force many helmets of the kings, which were bedecked with jewels that were sources of all brilliance. Purport. On the Kaurava side, there were many stalwart commanders like Bhishma, Drona, Kripa, and Karna, and their military strength was as insurmountable as the great ocean. And yet it was due to Lord Krishna's grace that Arjuna alone, sitting on the chariot, could manage to vanquish them one after another without difficulty. There were many changes of commanders on the other side, but on the Pandava side, Arjuna alone on the chariot, driven by Lord Krishna, could manage the whole responsibility of the great war. Similarly, when the Pandavas were living at the palace of Virata incognito, the Kauravas picked a quarrel with King Virata and decided to take away his large number of cows. While they were taking away the cows, Arjuna fought with them incognito and was able to regain the cows along with some booty taken by force, the jewels set on the turbans of the royal order. That was the booty, the jewels. Arjuna remembered that all this was possible by the grace of the Lord. Text 15. It was he only who withdrew the duration of life from everyone, and who, in the battlefield, withdrew the speculative power and strength of enthusiasm from the great military phalanx made by the Kauravas, headed by Bhishma, Karna, Drona, Shalya, etc. Their arrangement was expert and more than adequate. But he, Lord Shri Krishna, while going forward, did all this. Perfect. The absolute personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, expands himself by his planetary Paramatma portion in everyone's heart, and thus he directs everyone in the matter of recollection, forgetfulness, knowledge, the absence of intelligence, and all psychological activities. It's from Bhagavad Gita 15:50. As the Supreme Lord, he can increase or decrease the duration of life of a living being. Thus the Lord conducted the battle of Kurukshetra according to his own plan. He wanted that battle to establish Yudhishthira as the emperor of this planet. And to facilitate this transcendental business, he killed all who were on the opposite party by his omnipotent will. The other party was equipped with all military strength, supported by big generals like Bhishma, Drona, and Shalya, and it would have been physically impossible for Arjuna to win the battle had the Lord not helped him by every kind of tactic. Such tactics are generally followed by every statesman, even in modern warfare, but they are all done materially by powerful espionages, military tactics, and diplomatic maneuvers. But because Arjuna was the Lord's affectionate devotee, the Lord did all this himself without personal anxiety by Arjuna. That is the way of the devotional service of the Lord. 16. Great generals like Bhishma, Drona, Karna, Bhurishrava, Shusharma, Shalya, Jayadratha, and Vahalika all directed their invincible weapons against me. But by his, Lord Krishna, grace, by Krishna's grace, they could not even touch a hair on my head. Similarly, Prahlada Maharaj, the supreme devotee of Lord Nrsimhadev, was unaffected by the weapons the demons used against him. Further, the history of Prahlad Maharaj, the great devotee of Nrsimhadev, is narrated in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagvatam. Prahlada Maharaja, a small child of only 5 years, became the object of envy for his great father, Hiranyakashipu, only because of his becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. The demon father employed all his weapons to kill the devotee son, Prahlada. But by the grace of the Lord, he was saved from all sorts of dangerous actions by his father. He was thrown in a fire, in boiling oil, from the top of the hill, underneath the legs of an elephant, and he was administered poison. At last the father himself took up a chopper to kill his son, and thus Nrsimhadeva appeared and killed the heinous father in the presence of the son. Thus, no one can kill a devotee of the Lord. Similarly, Arjuna was also saved by the Lord, although all dangerous weapons were employed by his great opponents like Bhishma. Karna, born of Kunti by the sun god prior to her marriage with Maharaj Pandu. Karna took his birth with bangles and earrings, extraordinary signs for an undaunted hero. In the beginning his name was Vasusena, but when he grew up, he presented his natural bangles and earrings to Indradeva, and thenceforward he became known as Vaikartana. After his birth from the maiden Kunti, he was thrown in the Ganges. Later he was picked up by Adirata, and he and his wife Radha brought him up as their own offspring. That's different rather. Karna was very charitable, especially toward the Brahmins. There was nothing he could not spare from a Brahmana. In the same charitable spirit, he gave in charity his natural bangles and earrings to Indradeva, who, being very much satisfied with him, gave him in return a great weapon called Shakti. He was admitted as one of the students of Dronacharya, and from the very beginning there was some rivalry between him and Arjuna. Seeing his constant rivalry with Arjuna, Duryodhana picked him up as his companion, and this gradually grew into greater intimacy. He was also present in the great assembly of Draupadi's Slamvara function, and when he attempted to exhibit his talent in that meeting, Draupadi's brother declared that Karna could not take part in the competition because of his being the son of a sugar carpenter. Although he was refused in the competition, still, when Arjuna was successful in piercing the fish target on the ceiling and Draupadi bestowed her garland upon Arjuna, Karna and the other disappointed princes offered an unusual stumbling block to Arjuna while he was living in Draupadi. Specifically, Karna fought with him very valiantly, but all of them were defeated by Arjuna. Duryodhana was very much pleased with Karna because of his constant rivalry with Arjuna, and when he was in power, he enthroned Karna in a state of anger. Being baffled in his attempt to win Draupadi, Karna advised Duryodhana to attack King Drupada, for after defeating him both, Arjuna and Draupadi could be arrested. But Dronacharya rebuked them for this conspiracy, and they refrained from the action. Karna was defeated many times, not only by Arjuna, but also by Bhimasena. He was the king of the kingdom of Bengal, Orissa, and Madras combined. Later on, he took an active part in the Rajasuya sacrifice of Maharaj Yudhishthira, and when there was gambling between the rival brothers, designed by Shakuni, Karna took part in the game, and he was very pleased when Draupadi was offered as a bet in the gambling. This fed his old grudge. When Draupadi was in the game, he was very enthusiastic to declare the news, and it is he who ordered Dushasana to take away the garments of both the Pandavas and Draupadi. He asked Draupadi to select another husband because, being lost by the Pandavas, she was rendered a slave of the Kurus. He was always an enemy of the Pandavas, and whenever there was an opportunity, he tried to curb them by all means. During the battle of Kurukshetra, he foresaw the conclusive result, and he expressed his opinion that due to Lord Krishna's being the chariot driver of Arjuna, the battle should be won by Arjuna. He always deferred to Bhishma, and sometimes he was proud enough to say that within 5 days he could finish up the Pandavas, if Bhishma would not interfere with his plan of action. But he was much mortified when Bhishma died. He killed Gotatkacha with the Shakti weapon obtained from Indradeva. His son Vrishasena was killed by Arjuna. He killed the largest amount of Pandava soldiers. At last, there was a severe fight with Arjuna, and it was he only who was able to knock off the helmet of Arjuna. But it so happened that the wheel of his chariot stuck in the battlefield mud, and when he got down to set the wheel right, Arjuna took the opportunity and killed him, although he requested Arjuna not to do so. We are in the middle of purport, but I will stop here. I will note where we stopped. In October, Burishrava, Prabhupada started explaining or writes about this personality. I just take this opportunity that tomorrow's reading is not yet confirmed. We will let you know on Facebook and on our Facebook group. But we are definitely continuing next week on Wednesday. And again, for tomorrow, stay tuned, we'll let you know. This will now end today's reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. So see you next time. Hare Krishna.